Good evening. My guest tonight, I'm sure, feels like an intimate member of every Canadian family. He's known by the company he keeps. Della Street, and Paul Drake, and Hamilton Burger, and Lieutenant Tragg. And my guest, of course, is the man who almost never loses a case. None other than our own New Westminster-born Raymond Burr, alias Perry Mason. My first question to Mr. Burr. I don't know whether to plead guilty or to engage you as my counsel, but I insist that my first question must be that you should tell me about the Perry Mason family, because you're Raymond Burr to many of us, but to millions you're Perry Mason, the indomitable and seldom defeated defense counsel.
All right, Mr. Webster, what do you want to know about the Perry Mason family?
I want to know, I know them all by heart, of course, and I think of you in your stage presences. I think of you as Perry Mason and Della Street and Lieutenant Tragg, who annoys me sometimes, and Paul Drake, who is incredibly super efficient. But tell me about how you got into Perry Mason and how long you're going to stay in it. This is your 7th season coming up.
Well, I got into Perry Mason like everyone else involved in the permanent cast. All the names you just mentioned, by a long process of elimination, perhaps. They tested many actors and actresses around the world and in the United States. Finally, they gave up one day, and that's how I got into it. I think the substance of staying in it is something else again. We are very happy to have had a wonderful production company that's been given every bit of cooperation through the years, and one of those unusual groups that has maintained the quality of the kind of shows that we started out doing.
Paul Drake, for instance, this incredibly crisp, efficient kind of fellow, he always brings up the vital evidence in that half-day adjournment you get in television. Is he as crisp off stage as he is on stage?
Crisper.
Crisper.
As a matter of fact, most of the people, well, all of them, as far as the permanent cast are concerned, Jack, are, you don't mind my calling you Jack?
Please, please. I feel less guilty if you call me Jack.
All of them are perhaps more than they are within the roles that they're playing on this particular television show. Barbara Hale is more attractive, more feminine, more warm, more a human being off stage than she is on. William Hopper is more precise, more good looking, more fun than he is on. Mr. Ray Collins is
That's Lieutenant Tragg.
Lieutenant Tragg, greater gentleman, greater intellect, more of a paradox than he is on. William Tallman, who plays Mr. Burger, is a combination of all of these things, and probably one of the best actors we have on the American scene. He will one day finally come into his own, probably in the character field, because we're all getting older, and that will be exciting. He's a very, very fine actor and one of the finest minds outside of just the dramatic field of anyone that I have come across in a good many years.
What about Perry Mason off stage? Does Perry Mason off stage as Raymond Burr, now thoroughly steeped in the law, and feel that he is in fact a member of the legal profession and a defender of the rights of the individual human being?
I feel that I know enough about the law after being involved in this show for 7 years to be able to recommend a good lawyer.
Do you ever need a good lawyer yourself?
Oh, there have been many times. Every time you turn around, every time I make a new contract with my own home company. I've been with CBS for many years. It would be ridiculous of me not to have the best lawyer available, not to make a good contract.
In the 6 years you've been on the air with Perry Mason, how many times have you lost, television-wise, a case?
I have... that's a very difficult question because I don't know what the... Well, we have a problem with semantics, and we have a problem with a basic question of, are you losing when you successfully defend someone who is innocent?
Well, no, I'm talking purely as a simple television viewer. I can't...
No, but you can't say win or lose. You must say that an innocent person has been defended successfully. Would you say that the prosecution won if they successfully prosecuted a person and the person was innocent and they were hung, shot, electrocuted, or went to the gas chamber?
Let's put it this way, then. How many times has a client of Perry Mason, represented by Raymond Burr, ever been found guilty?
That's better.
We solved the
once.
semantic. Do you remember the circumstances? I didn't see that.
Well, yes, this was a question of someone from South Africa who, this was in about our third season, Jack, and we had a case of someone from South Africa that a company in South Africa retained Mason as a lawyer to defend in a murder case. Mason defended that person based upon being retained by the South African company. And this is, of course, a long time ago, but I think these are the facts. Then,
because I only want the facts.
Yes, I know. I think that it finally turned out that Mason lost. The man was proved guilty of the crime. And the final resolve of it was that the man whom Mason was defending, that he'd been retained to defend by this company in South Africa, was dead. And the man whom Mason had defended in actual being had killed the man from South Africa.
You got out of it gracefully.
I got out of it gracefully. No one liked the show, and I wasn't very crazy about it.
You mean there was an audience resentment because you lost the case?
There were the biggest conglomerate group, 35,000 letters against losing this particular case.
So you didn't lose a case, or you might lose your audience.
Well, the Mason show is not a question. Again, we're in a question of not winning or losing. Prosecution would, in any country, I'm sure, with the one or two exceptions, would be most unhappy if they were to prosecute an innocent person and successfully prosecute them.
But take a kind of professionally hard-bitten person like myself. I'm being at my most charming tonight, of course. Is it not kind of unreal that within the scheduled hour-less commercials, you must win the case? Does this not create a little bit of unreality about the legal procedures?
No, I think not. We do have a confession in a courtroom, which doesn't usually happen, but we must take some license in an hour show. There are many attorneys, barristers and solicitors, advocates, down the line, whatever you call them, who have had a very, very successful career of successfully defending a case, being a successful advocate. I know of 5 or 6 lawyers in the United States that I could say great trial lawyers, one in Washington, D.C. by the name of Williams, who hasn't lost a case. One in San Francisco by the name of Ehrlich, who is a great trial lawyer who hasn't lost a case in 20 years. Jerry Giesler in Hollywood,
You lost a couple, I remember.
He did not lose a case. And all the time I knew that he was trying, he lost one, he's dead. That's the biggest case he lost. He lost before he was really ready to go, I think. He died too soon. But that's the only case that I know that he lost.